for teacher. And four here at school have worked hard to present this for you with the help of Sue Height and a lot of other people. And we hope you enjoy the show tonight. It's got community members, it's got a little bit of everything in it. We have song, we have lots of drama, and we have storytelling. We have a little bit of everything. So sit back and enjoy the show. Yay! Tony?
Okay.
Is first.
Wow. Well, you know, they asked me to come up because I've been here for a long while around Crown King, and my folks came in here in the early mining days and all that. So 66 years ago, I was in the first grade here in this very room. And when I started kind of thinking about this, I'm like, wow, that is a while, you know. And I see most of you folks are not even halfway there, you know. So 66, but I was 6 years old. The year was 1946, and I'd just like to tell you just a little background about 1946. You know, the United States was just coming out of World War II. And World War II was the war that we had to win. And everybody, the whole country, pulled together to fight that war. You know, and even the women went into the workforce and all of that. The mines were still working here. And they'd been working through the war to produce metals for the war effort, obviously. And the Gladiator was working, the Crown King was working, and there was 27 kids in school. 27 kids. That's the most that I ever remember being in the school here, you know. America was in between. It was in between. When I was a youngster, I still have my ration book. They didn't build any automobiles in World War II. All the metal went into the war effort. And so I still have a little ration book. Every man, woman, and child had one. And you had to have a stamp to buy sugar, to buy rubber, for rubber tires, or to get tires for gasoline, things like that. So everybody contributed to the effort in World War II. The factories in 1946 were just starting to retool to get into the domestic things for refrigerators and stuff. They've been building planes and guns and all that stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to describe the schoolroom here just a little bit. The library part was not here. There was a little room back here was the library, just a small room. That room back there where we have the bathroom now was a place where the kids hung their coats. And of course the kitchen was there. And there was a big pot-bellied stove set over there back on that end of the building, and it was a wood stove. The water supply, it was a tank outside, and it caught the rainwater off the roof. I don't know why we didn't get sick drinking that stuff. But we did, you know. I can't explain that to you. There's somebody put some Clorox in it or something, I guess. Anyway. I would describe myself at the age of 6 years old as somewhere between ornery and mischievous.
You haven't changed any.
I used to get in a lot of trouble with my aunts when I was that age, and I, you know, some of these things really stick in your head through the years. And my first grade teacher was named Mrs. Sturm, and in those days, teachers were endowed with the authority to administer capital punishment. I was going to say capital punishment. Corporal punishment was pretty bad for a little guy like me, and I got it, yeah, and she had a paddle. I don't know what I was doing, I don't remember, but it wasn't good, I guess. And she took me back in that kitchen back there, and she had a paddle about that thick and about that long, and she lit me up back there. That that was the only time I ever got a spanking, you know, but, yeah, anyway, those were the days, I guess. Christmas time, was a big deal in Crown King, and that's one thing that hasn't changed. Every Christmas time that the school has a play here, the community always came out, and all those miners and all those people back in that day, they all came, because there was no television, there was no computers, there was the things we have these days, there just wasn't. And so any entertainment was really beneficial to the community, and everybody just loved the programs here, you know, so. Anyway, after the program, I don't even think I was in it, but I heard this big rustle outside, and these bells were ringing and all this, and here came this old man in a red suit and a white beard. And, you know, I really hadn't seen much of Santa Claus, you know, when I was small, but maybe a picture or two or whatever, but that was about it in the book. So I was a little bit taken aback. It looked kind of scary to me. Anyway, my mom and my sister were in the audience. They said, "You go on up," you know, some of the kids would come up, sit on his knee, and I, well, all right, I goes up. He sets me up on his knee, and then he came the famous question: "Have you been a good boy this year?" Yeah, it's like people talk about those near-death experiences. Whenever your life flashes before you. And, you know, and so I was thinking about like the time I hid under the house down there behind the store. I was playing with the cats or whatever out there, and I ran under that, I got under that house, and I went to sleep under there. When I awoke, the whole town was in a panic, looking for me. They were looking in the wells, every place you could think of, you know, and I was afraid to get out. I stayed there, and finally my grandpa spotted me under there. And boy, that was another. So anyway, I'm sitting on Santa's knee, and confession was not in my soul. And I said, "Yes, sir, I've been a real good boy." And he gave me a present. I think it was a box of Cracker Jacks. I don't know if you guys, if they even have, they always had a little toy. I mean, the Cracker Jacks weren't so hot, but the toy was, you know. So anyway, I'm really glad to see that you folks are all here tonight, and you know, Santa. After that, I went 8 years here. I graduated from school here, and every year Santa would come to Crown King, and I don't think he ever missed the lick coming to Crown King. So I sure hope he comes to me. That would be a privilege. So, thank you very much.
All right, we have a wonderful act tonight, actually two. We have Sean Fitzpatrick and Jerry Morgan, and they have some music for you tonight. One of the songs, you might recognize some of the events that are retold in the song. So listen carefully and see what you hear.
Yeah, I should just say, like, I've always loved this Christmas event, you know, for 25 years. I was really honored when Sue and Claudia asked me, and I wondered why. And it dawned on me they never heard me sing.
But I heard about your singing, and it was all good.
Holy night, into singing it tonight.
Yay.
Hands aren't quite what they used to be lately, but I'll do my best. Just about 3 years have passed since I found this little town. Came up no direction, decided to settle down. Made new friends and had friendships and people moved and who came in. Now it's Christmas in a little mountain town. So I could have wrote a song about manger scenes of snowmen, about reindeer and holiday cheer. Instead of thinking about the ones we lost, and adding up this year's cost, and I'm proud to say I lived here this year. I'm proud to say I lived here this year. We had fires that drove us away. These nights we prayed for those who stayed. Tears in our eyes, we watched the smoke rise in the wind. Rains that came and washed the roads away. Just one more head, one more bad day. So many things that came without warning. So I could have wrote a song about manger scenes of snowmen, about reindeer and holiday cheer. Instead of thinking about the ones we lost, adding up this year's cost, and I'm proud to say I lived here this year. Proud to say we all lived here this year. Sitting here and I look around at the people of this little town, all proud to say that we come from here. We all came here and made our way with each and every single day, looking forward to being here next year. So I could have wrote a song about manger scenes of snowmen, about reindeer and holiday cheer. Instead of thinking about the ones we lost, and adding up this year's cost, and I'm proud to say I lived here this year. Through all that we've been through, if there's one thing I can give you, it's that I'm proud to say we all lived through this year.
Okay, there will be a slight break while we get the children ready. Word to our mistress is it takes two. While this is going on, let me just say that this has been, I've been teaching for, I think this is 38 years. And this has been my favorite year ever. I taught in a big city school, I taught in a little school in the south, I taught in inner city Phoenix for a long time, and long time, too long. And this has just been the most wonderful place to teach. I've never felt so supported and had parents that just are right there, and a school board that helps any way they can, and just everybody's been great. And Dave and I are both very happy to be here too, and we're just glad to be a part of it. Now let me check on the rest.
Only if it's Bailey's.
Oh my God.
Hey, you'll have to listen carefully. Okay. Start us off, Chrissy.
Roll, roll, roll the snow, makes a button on.
Big snowball.
Big snowball, make two more, stack them up, so that they won't fall off. Roll, roll, roll the snow. Now, add
Yes.
the button eyes. No, not eyes, it's the stakes. Roll, roll, roll the snow. Each arm will be a stick. One on the left, one on the right. That will do the trick. Roll, roll, roll the snow. Add the button eyes.
Oh.
Now he's looking right at me. What a nice surprise. Roll, roll, roll the snow.
A carrot.
A carrot for the nose. Make a mouth out of some coal. Now we need some clothes. Roll,
Roll.
roll, roll, roll the snow. Add a scarf and a hat. We have made a great snowman, and that's the end of that.
Yeah. What an awesome snowman. Especially a good snowman. Especially since it's my grandson.
Okay. Next, we have Raven, so you guys see your list. And Joni. And she has a story for all of us, adults and children alike. Actually, it's okay.
Dad, this is a vlog.
Then you can let me get the children out of the back. I'll do this. If you direct your attention to our new smart board over here, which will take a minute to warm up, but the pictures from the book that she's reading, we were able to download so that you can see them on the big screen. Because otherwise you'd have no clue what's going on in the story back there.
I just have
All right, this is called The Amazing Christmas Extravaganza. all started with one little string of tiny white Christmas lights. In the past, Mr. Merriweather had been happy celebrating Christmas with his wife and their children, Matthew and Sarah. Each year, he made a big show of getting the box of ornaments down from the attic. Then the Merriweather family decorated the tree together and hung a wreath on the front door. But this Christmas was different. This year, we're really going to celebrate Christmas, he announced. This year, we're going to put lights on the house. They were all very excited. Mrs. Merriweather clapped her hands and Sarah hopped on one foot. Then Mr. Merriweather hauled his ladder outside and tacked up a small string of white lights around the front window. "That's fine," he said, admiring his handiwork. He left the lights on all night so he could see the glow from his bedroom, and he went to sleep a happy man. "Kind of shrimpy little string of lights you got there, pal." Mr. Merriweather stopped shoveling and turned to see Mr. Clack, his neighbor from across the street. "Wait till you see my house," Mr. Clack bragged. "I got 17 strings of lights, and they blink on and off." Mr. Merriweather was suddenly embarrassed. "Well, I'm not done yet. You wait till I'm finished, and then I guess you'll see something." He pulled his hat down over his ears and went back to his shoveling. That afternoon, Mr. Merriweather gathered up his kids and drove the station wagon to 5 big department stores. He bought so many Christmas decorations that he couldn't close the tailgate. He could hardly wait to get home and put them all up. "Can we really afford all that?" Mrs. Merriweather asked when she saw the decorations. "Of course we can, honey," Mr. Merriweather said. "It's Christmas." That night he peeked out his bedroom window and saw Mr. Clack staring up at the new display. He chuckled to himself when Mr. Clack kicked some snow and stomped home. The next day, all of Mr. Merriweather's neighbors stopped by to tell him how wonderful his house looked. He had never gotten so many compliments. They made him feel giddy and full inside, like he'd just eaten a big dinner. But still, he thought, there was room for improvement. Every morning for the next week, Mr. Merriweather fired up the old station wagon and went in search of more decorations, which he carefully added onto his house with the seriousness of a true artist. And every evening, the neighbors and their kids came out to see the new wonders spouting from the House of Lights. "Magnificent," the neighbors exclaimed. "Awesome." Matthew and Sarah's friends told them they were lucky to have such a great dad. "Yeah," Matthew said, a little puzzled, "he's really something." Mrs. Merriweather tried to be understanding, but she was worried. Christmas Day would be here soon, and it seemed that her husband could only think of colored lights and plastic candles. She was relieved when Mr. Merriweather told her he had been to every store he could find and there was nothing left to buy. Then she heard the hammer banging and saw the buzzing in the garage. Several days later, Mr. Merriweather unveiled what he had made. "It's truly an extravaganza," the neighbors gasped. Mr. Merriweather flipped a switch, and the recording of the 12 Days of Christmas blared out of the loudspeakers. Life-size wooden cutouts filled the yard, representing each of the 12 days. There were maids a-milking, geese a-laying, lords a-leaping, and even a partridge in a pear tree. "And this is nothing," shouted Mr. Merriweather. "You should see what I'm building next." "Terrific," muttered Mr. Clack. "I like celebrating Christmas as much as the next guy, but this is ridiculous." Mr. Merriweather was no longer thinking about Christmas. However, he was thinking about a bigger, brighter, and more. The next night, Mr. Merriweather was back at work on his extravaganza. "You better come down now, dear," Mrs. Merriweather called up to him. "The children are in the Christmas program tonight." "Sorry, no time," Mr. Merriweather mumbled through a mouthful of nails. "I've got too much to do. You go on without me." It was hopeless. Mrs. Merriweather tried to explain to Matthew and Sarah that their father was a very busy man. "Maybe he's gone a little wacko," Matthew said. "Hush," his mother scolded. "Don't talk about your father that way." Mr. Merriweather's display continued to grow. One day he put up Santa's workshop, complete with elves. The next day he added a giant snowman made of styrofoam. And finally he built a 50-foot Santa with a mechanical arm that waved. People from 3 countries away brought their children to see the now famous Merriweather front yard, but it wasn't so much fun anymore for the people who lived nearby. The extravaganza used so much electricity that there was hardly any left for the neighbors. Their Christmas trees were dim and dull, and their Christmas cookies came out doughy from ovens that wouldn't heat. The noise from the sightseers honking and yelling was so loud that the annual Christmas caroling had to be canceled. No one could hear the singers. People visiting their families got stranded for hours in the tangle of traffic. Sometimes they just gave up and went home. Mr. Merriweather didn't even notice. He sat snugly in his brightly lit home, humming along the 12 Days of Christmas. Finally, the neighbors decided something had to be done. Christmas Eve, they held a meeting at Mr. Clack's house. "Let's call the cops," someone shouted. "Let's take him to court," screamed another. "Now, wait a minute," Mr. Clack said. "We don't want to look like a bunch of Scrooges." Just then, all the lights in the neighborhood went out. Up and down the street, everything was black. Everything, that is, except the Christmas extravaganza, which glowed brighter than ever. "That's the last straw," roared Mr. Clack. "I don't care what people think. I say we tear it down ourselves, tonight." Everyone yelled in agreement. Then they armed themselves with tools of destruction and swarmed over Mr. Merriweather's front yard, slashing, bashing, and trashing everything in sight. Mr. Merriweather and his wife woke up in midair. "Oh my, oh no," he wailed. "What is it?" cried the children, running into his room. "I think it's an earthquake," Mr. Merriweather exclaimed. They all dove under the bed and huddled there together, listening to the terrible screeching, cracking, and thumping. It lasted all night long. Finally, the noises stopped. Mr. Merriweather poked his head out from under the bed. It was morning, Christmas morning. He ran downstairs, opened the front door, and couldn't believe what he saw. The Christmas extravaganza was gone. Yesterday, giant snowflakes, Santa Clauses, reindeer, and lights had decorated his house and yard. Now there was only a huge pile of sputtering rubble. Mr. Clack and the rest of the mob were still standing around. Their heavy breaths steamed in the cold morning air. "I guess that'll teach you to muck up our neighborhood," Mr. Clack sneered. Mr. Merriweather felt as if he had been hit by a log. He could barely talk. But I was just celebrating Christmas," he said. "I didn't know it bothered you. Thought you liked it." The neighbors were silent, no longer caught up in their attack. They looked at each other and began to think about what they had done, and they were ashamed. "I'm sorry," Mr. Clack said sheepishly. He picked up a pair of broken reindeer antlers. "Here," he said, "we'll help you put it all back together again. We'll make it even better." Mr. Merriweather shook his head. "No," he said, "I think some nice little white lights will do just fine." He pulled the tiny string out of the smoking heap, and Mr. Clack and all the neighbors helped him tack it up around the front window. Mrs. Merriweather brought out cups of hot cider, and the whole neighborhood admired Mr. Merriweather's little string of white lights, his fine tree, and his beautiful wreath. "You know, Mr. Merriweather," Mr. Clack said, "that really was an amazing Christmas extravaganza." "Thank you," replied Mr. Merriweather, "but these are my real masterpieces." He hugged Matthew and then swung Sarah high up in the air. Mrs. Merriweather took her husband by the arm. "Don't feel bad, dear," she said. "Everybody should be able to celebrate Christmas in his own way, whether it's with lots of lights or none at all. Yours just got so big there wasn't room for anywhere else." "Well, I've learned my lesson," Mr. Merriweather said with a sigh. "I guess I got carried away." "I think everyone did," Mrs. Merriweather said, "but I'm proud of you. I didn't know you were so artistic." Mr. Merriweather smiled. He gazed at his children, his friends, and his big mound of junk. He noticed that several large pieces of wood were still in good condition. He wondered out loud, "How many days till Easter?"
Okay. Now we need a brief intermission while we get ready for the big event. Happening here tonight. Maybe some of you read Laura Ingalls Wilder's books when you were young, especially the women out here. Little House on the Prairie, Little House in the Big Woods, all of those. I remember those. They were wonderful, heartwarming stories of our Pioneer West. And they were favorites of mine. I grew up in Washington, D.C. of all places, but I dreamed of being in the Pioneer West, and I was always Laura. Well, maybe some of you don't remember that, but you remember Little House on the Prairie on TV. Yeah? Now I see some heads moving. Okay, good. Remember Michael Landon as Pa? Yeah. Okay, well, who can forget how strong and courageous and inventive he was? He could make something out of nothing. All right, well, as part of our social studies curriculum, we've been reading and learning about the pioneer times through the stories of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And tonight we would like to show you how a Christmas might have been during those days in our own retelling of Mrs. Wilder's classic tales. Our apologies to Laura Ingalls Wilder because we changed some of the characters to fit our needs. Carrie was the baby most of the time. Carrie is now the second eldest. And then we have Laura, and then we have baby Charlie over there on the floor. And we added a sound man here too. So we have all the characters we need. This short play is presented in something called Reader's Theater. Reader's Theater is used in schools to demonstrate comprehension of something that students have studied. And they take what they have learned and put it in a format as a speech to others. And they might wear costumes. We've chosen to wear costumes. Sometimes they wear masks, sometimes they just read. And the idea behind all of this is to read with extreme expression and to make it come alive in the audience, in the mind of the audience. And that's what we're working on tonight. It doesn't have the stress of moving around or memorizing, so it's much nicer for young school children to learn play acting this way. And it's something that I've used often in my teaching. And it seems to work very well. Everybody learns a lot, didn't we? Yep, we did. Okay. So they're only using their voices tonight. There won't be too much movement around here. Our readers, our players tonight are Pa, will be played by Dave Axton. See what happens to the husband of the teacher. Ma is Ms. Jennifer Hill. Laura is Aiden Mine. And Mary, the eldest daughter, is Susanna Fitzpatrick. And Carrie, the next oldest daughter for our purposes, is L'Oreal Mine. And baby Charlie, who then becomes Charlie in this part of the play, is Donovan Fitzpatrick. And we also have Mr. Boast and Mrs. Boast, who are gonna visit us, but right now they're sitting off stage, George and Sandy Lindell. Samuel Mine is in charge of bells. And I have a behind the scenes team, the ladies in the wardrobe room here, Sandy Morgan and Sue Height. That was wrong.
That's all right.
It works.
Sandy Baker and Sue Height. Sandy Cafe. No, okay. That's how she is on my phone. Okay.
Oh,
Here we go. This is called Christmas by the Shores of Silver Lake. Large soft snowflakes are falling outside the little surveyor's cabin by Silver Lake in Dakota Territory. The Ingalls family now has 4 children, 3 girls and a little boy, baby Charlie, named for his father, Charles. Mary, the oldest daughter, has become blind due to a terrible bout with scarlet fever. Carrie and Mary are becoming lovely young ladies. Laura, the youngest sister, is growing bigger every day. It's been a very hard year, and there isn't much money to spare for gifts this Christmas, but the whole Ingalls family and their friends still find the magical spirit of the holiday season. Join them on Christmas Eve in the middle of yet another blizzard.
It's a white Christmas. Brrr.
Yes, and we're all here and all well, so this will be a merry one.
I love this time of year. Our little house is so full of secrets.
Laura was thinking about how Mary has knitted some warm woolen socks and how she had put together a church tie for Pa from a scrap of silk she found in Ma's scrap bag. She smiled thinking about the past weeks when she and Carrie had made an apron for Ma from an old calico curtain that had hung in the shanty by the lake. Now, while Ma was fixing things for supper and Pa was bringing in more wood for the wood stove, Laura, Carrie, and Mary whispered together,
Tonight we will work on our presents for Ma, right, Mary?
Yes, did you find a piece of fine white muslin? I remember Ma putting it in her scrap bag,
I did. We can cut a small square from it.
and I will hem this square with tiny stitches, and it will be a fine new handkerchief for Ma.
And, wait, no. We can put it in the pocket of her new apron.
I'll wrap it in tissue paper when you finish and hide
Ma's bedroom. Ma had cut bed shoes from an old woolly blanket. The blanket was all worn out in the middle, but the ends were striped in red and green. That's the part Ma cut up. Laura sewed one slipper and Carrie made the other, seaming by hand and turning and finishing them with cords and tassels of yarn. Then they hid them in Ma's bedroom. Mary couldn't see them, but knew everything in that little cabin by touching with her fingers, so they hid her gifts where she wouldn't find them.
Baby, Charlie's present is the best one of all.
I think so too, Laura. That little coat Mom made from Pa's old winter jacket with beautiful blue silk lining and the small cap to match will look perfect on baby Charlie.
You know, girls, Charlie is 4 years old now. We shouldn't keep calling him baby. Look at him over there by the stove, stacking up those blocks of wood Pa made and painted for him. Doesn't he look like he's not a baby anymore?
Charlie heard this last comment, looked up, and said proudly,
Look at. I'm a big boy now. Look at my blocks. I made our house and the barn.
"Good for you, Charlie." Again, Pa came stomping his feet to remove the snow from his tall boots.
It's a humdinger of a cool spell for the night before Christmas. I'm afraid it's too cold for Santa Claus to be out.
Oh
We don't need Santa Claus. We've all been. Oops.
Suddenly, she clapped her hand over her mouth before she let out all the Christmas secrets.
We're all snug under cover anyway. The horses and mule are all warm and comfortable too. And Laura, you'll be pleased that I gave them extra feed for Christmas Eve. Yes, it's a pretty good Christmas, isn't it, Caroline?
Oh, yes, Charles, it is. Come and eat now. I have a hot bowl of mush with warm milk that'll warm you quicker than anything else, Charles.
After supper, they told stories remembering other Christmases past. They had shared so many wonderful Christmases together. Well, some were very hard ones, and some that made them all smile with the memories.
I still have my doll Charlotte. She was the rag doll from my stocking when we were in the big woods, Charlie.
I remember the little tin cups and pennies from our Christmas in Indian Territory. But they are gone now, aren't they, Mom?
Yes, I'm afraid so. And that was so long ago. Girls, do you remember when Mr. Edwards, who walked 40 miles to Independence and back, he brought us presents from Santa Claus? I wonder where he is now, Charles.
Well, he started off alone down the Verdigris River, I recall.
Well, wherever he is, I hope that he's as lucky and warm as we are.
And you are here this year, Pa. You aren't lost in a blizzard.
Tears came then to Ma's eyes, remembering that dreadful Christmas when Pa had not come home. They feared he never would.
I'm just so thankful, Charles.
Oh. That was a joke on me. There I was, freezing and starving near to death for 3 days and nights, having to eat the gifts. Oyster crackers and Christmas candy. And all that time I was under the bank of our own creek, not even 100 yards from the house. What a blizzard that was.
My favorite was the time there was the Sunday school Christmas tree. You're too little to remember that, Laura and Charlie. But oh, how wonderful that was.
Not as good as this one. Now I am 10, and we still have Carrie and Charlie too.
Laura was remembering when the wolf almost took Carrie. She certainly was glad that Carrie wasn't hurt, but how scared they had all been.
Yes, Laura, this is one of the best, and maybe next year we'll have a Sunday school here. What's your favorite, Charlie?
I still have my Christmas box, and I still play with them.
Oh, Charlie, you just got those last year.
Well, too bad we can't have a tree. There isn't so much as a bush on Silver Lake. We wouldn't want one anyway, just for ourselves, I reckon. But Carrie, I think we can have a little Sunday school celebration of our own.
And with that, Pa jumped up and got his recorders, while Ma and Laura washed the bowls and pot and set them away. Frost was thickening on the window panes, and frost furred the cracks around the door. Fluffy snowflakes fluttered against the clear upper edges of the window panes, but the lamplight was bright and cozy on the red Christmas tablecloth. And the fire glowed behind the open drafts of the stove.
Charles, we can't sing so soon after eating, so why don't you just limber up the recorder?
All right.
So merrily Pa played his recorders.
Here's one from my childhood. Are we ready to sing now?
The cheery voice of the recorder now changed as Pa played a few notes of a hymn. Mary called out.
What's that I hear?
Mary, I don't hear it.
I thought I heard. Listen, it sounds like.
Whoa!
Charles, what on earth?
Out in the night, in the storm, they all heard a man shouting, and again. But this time very near. Then sleigh bells tinkled in the night air.
Hello!
Oh, why it's Boast. Come in, come in.
He must
Hello, Ingalls!
Yeah, good to see ya.
he must be nearly frozen.
Here's Mrs. Boast too, Caroline. We'll go put up the horses in the barn.
Mrs. Boast was a great bundle of blankets and coats as she came through the door, bringing in snow and frosty air with her. But her merry voice rang out.
Oh no, we're not frozen. It was toasty warm up on the horse, and Mr. B wrapped me so tightly with all these blankets, and the cold couldn't reach me. Why, he even led the horses so my hands could stay under covers.
Well, this muffler is frozen all the same.
Ma unwrapped the frosted pile of blankets and scarves, so Mrs. Boast's young face appeared.
Did you come all this way on your horse, Mrs. Boast?
Oh no, only about 2 miles. We were in our bobsled when we got stuck in the snow. and went into a ditch. The team of horses and the sled fell down through the snow, but Mr. B got the horses out, and we had to leave the sled behind. Perhaps your Charles can help us tomorrow when the weather breaks?
Oh, I know, the snow out over the drifts of, the snow out there can drift over the tall grass so a body can't see where the ditch is. The grass underneath won't hold up any weight.
Take my chair, Mrs. Boast, it's the warmest place.
Why, thank you.
Mr. Boast and Pa came in then laughing, and pretty soon everyone was
Oh, boy!
I don't know why. I don't know why, but when Mr. Boast laughs, we all feel like laughing. It's contagious in a good way.
How do you do, Mr. Boast? You must both be starved. We'll have supper ready in a jiffy.
So Laura fried up slices of salt pork, while Ma set biscuits in the oven. Then Ma drained the pork, dipped the slices in flour, and set them to fry on the big wood stove. Laura peeled and sliced 2 potatoes.
Carrie, make some milk gravy and a fresh pot of tea. We can make out well enough, I reckon.
After a nice supper, the men began to talk seriously.
We didn't look for you until spring, Boast. Winter is such a bad time to make that trip.
Oh, we found that out. But I'm telling you, Ingalls, the whole country is moving west in the spring. All Iowa is coming, and we know we better be ahead of the rush, or some claim jumper would be on our homestead. So off we went, weather or no weather, Ingalls. You should have filed on a homestead last fall. You'll have to rush it come spring, or you'll find no land left.
Ooh, Ma and Pa looked at each other with worry on their faces. They were both thinking of that lovely homestead that Pa had found last summer. But now it was Christmas Eve and not a time to worry.
Oh, I'm so tired. It was a hard drive, but then we had to leave the sleigh and all our belongings behind and come through the snowstorm. So we were so glad to see the lights of your cabin windows. And as we came closer, we heard your singing. You don't know how good that sounded, like a choir of angels.
Well, you'll rest here tonight, and yes, you'll stay here and rest well tonight.
You take Mrs. Boast in the big bed with you, Caroline, and Boast and I will bunk down here by the fire. Girls, you can sleep 3 in one bed for tonight. I'll be cozy and warm. Now, good night to all.
So Laura, Mary, and Carrie snuggled down into the bed listening to the grown-ups, and Pa playing his recorder. So the girls snuggled in and listened to the grown-ups moving around the house and remembered what a grand evening this had been.
This has been one of the finest Christmas Eves we've ever had. Don't you think so, Laura? Every Christmas is better than the Christmas before. I guess it must be because I'm growing up. Good night to all, and
Merry Christmas!
Take a bow. Take a bow. Come on. for Miss Peg Martin, who has a couple of tunes to play for us tonight.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little singing, you guys, all right? Okay, Silent Night. Well, let's see if I can figure it out. Okay, Rudolph. Okay.
Would you like to see the words? Sorry.
Up on the housetop. Okay.
On the housetop, reindeer paws, out jumps good old Santa Claus. Down through the chimney with lots of toys, all for the little ones' Christmas joys. Ho, 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 who would go? Ho, 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 who would go? Up on the housetop, click, 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 down through the chimney with good Saint Nick.
Okay, and then the last one.
Which one is this?
has a surprise for you. By Dave.
That's right.
Okay, and this is, you better watch out, okay? Just start reading it. Yeah, okay.
So I got some gifts. First one. Come here, my friend.
Oh, how sweet. Oh.
Were you good this year?
Yes.
You better
Next, Aiden. Were you good this year? Who's next? Sam. Were you good this year? And I have one more for an old student who used to be here. Anna. Were you good this year? All right. Merry Christmas.
I think Tony ought to go on. I forgot 3 of the old students. Megan, Leon, and Tony all deserve presents. Come on.
Thank you so much.
Very good.
I know, you're so excited. Heaven, Santa Claus came. Okay, we have a lot of delicious refreshments, and various people in the community have brought a lot of nice food for us tonight, and Megan did some cooking too. So, we're all kind of Megan fans around here. So, if some of you guys can help move a couple of chairs around the refreshments table, and if those of you who are being displaced would kind of maybe move this way or shuffle around. The portion of our show is over,